Today I am speaking about the declining number of African Americans in Major League Baseball. I'll be covering the history, current issues, and possible solutions. Up until the 1940s, blacks were not allowed to play Major League Baseball. This was part of the Jim Crow laws, which were in the United States. The Jim Crow laws were racial segregation laws. They did not allow blacks and whites to do anything together, such as use the same water fountains, go to the same schools, or even use the same washrooms, as well as many other things. Because of this, blacks formed their own baseball teams. In 1885, the blacks formed their own first team in New York, and in 1920, they formed the Negro League and played its first full season. In 1947, Jackie Robinson became the first African American Major League Baseball player. He had to put up with a ton of racism and couldn't fight back. He didn't sign just because he was a good player, but also because he was strong enough to put up with the racism he knew he would face. He opened the door to all other African Americans in Major League Baseball. In 1971, the Pittsburgh Pirates fielded the first all-African American baseball team, and they won the World Series that year. In 1975, Frank Robinson became the first African American manager in Major League Baseball. And in 1992, Cito Gaston became the first African American manager to win the World Series, and still remains the only African American manager to win the World Series. After the civil rights movements, blacks flourished in Major League Baseball. However, recently, things have changed. The number of African Americans is decreasing in Major League Baseball. In 1975, it was at an all-time high of 27% of Major League Baseball players were African American. However, in 2013, only 8.3% of players were African American. Baseball is a very large business and has become a sport for the rich. Generally, African Americans earn less than whites in the United States, and many live in poverty. It is a very good advantage for you to play on elite baseball teams in the United States. However, elite baseball teams are very expensive, and many teams cannot afford them. Tickets for games are also very expensive. Football gets 8 times more scholarships than baseball in university in the United States. This is why youth needing money to get into school would tend to play football rather than baseball, because they have a much higher chance of getting a scholarship. Baseball also has a huge minor league system, unlike football and basketball. Whereas in football and basketball, if you're good, you can go straight to the majors, but in baseball, even the best players spend many years in the minors. Minor league baseball players make very little money, which isn't enough to support yourself or your family, which is why many African American youth choose football or basketball instead of baseball. There is also a stereotype that blacks are good at basketball, and therefore basketball scouts tend to scout predominantly black schools rather than whites. And it's the opposite for baseball, whereas baseball scouts tend to scout predominantly white schools because the stereotype is that whites are good at baseball. Major League Baseball has created a diversity task force led by Bud Selig, the old commissioner of baseball. 2 programs this task force has created are the RBI programs, which stands for Reviving Baseball in Inner Cities, and the Urban Youth Academies. These 2 programs collect donations for African American youth to get equipment and provide coaching and showcases to get them into the sport. There's also been a lack of an African American role model in Major League Baseball ever since Ken Griffey Jr. retired over 5 years ago. Ken Griffey Jr. also stated that baseball should have better media promotion because basketball and football have fun commercials getting African American youth into the sport. However, baseball has boring commercials which don't entice the youth to get into the sport at all. More scouting should be sent to predominantly black schools and not just predominantly white schools with better reputations. This would level out the playing field to whites and blacks. The hope is that with all teams supporting these programs and solutions, African American youth will once again thrive in Major League Baseball.